I don't think there's any particular controversy or question about the value of investing in your employees through great training. No doubt we can all agree that it's a prime way to increase engagement and retention and productivity. But often, as we've learned, particularly in the last 16 months or so, life and other business priorities tend to get in the way. You know, you add a global pandemic and tighten budgets and trying to do too much with too few resources. And I'm guessing that a lot of companies are seeing this top priority faltering in their strategic plans. So my name is Delaney McKinley, and I am Vice President of Membership Marketing and Events for the Michigan Manufacturers Association. MMA is the only statewide organization focused solely on securing a prosperous future for Michigan manufacturers. And we do that by fighting for you in Lansing with effective advocacy, meaningful education like today's webinar, and strategic business services. We represent nearly 1,700 members, and they range from very small mom and pop shops to the world's largest and most iconic corporations. I'm very pleased to be joined by a great group of professionals this morning. As I mentioned, I really do hope that this is going to be an interactive discussion. So this webinar is actually set up as a meeting. So you may speak, you may unmute yourself. I think as you came in, the settings were to automatically kind of mute you. So please do join in the discussion. If you hear something that hits a particular point with you, feel free to build on. If you've got some experience that you think might add to the discussion, or if you've got some questions, chime in. We also have the chat feature because I know that some folks don't necessarily have a microphone. So feel free to add things in the chat. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you some of my very favorite people that I get the honor to work with quite often. And the first is Jamie Headley. Jamie is Director of Business Development at the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center, which is also known as the Center. The Center is a NIST-approved manufacturing extension partnership that helps Michigan manufacturers to work smarter, to compete, and to prosper through personalized consulting and training. Jamie's based in their Plymouth office, and she oversees client engagements and ensures that manufacturers throughout Michigan receive the services and support that they need. Jamie is a seasoned operations professional with more than 25 years of manufacturing and consulting experience in change management, strategic planning, leadership, process improvement, lean implementations, cost containment, and operational excellence. She has served as Director of Supply Chain for Catalan Pharma Solutions, Vice President of Operations for Art.com, and President and CEO of Dementia Services Group. So good morning, Jamie.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And next we have Christy Stepp. Christy is a partner with Sigred Solutions, a management recruiting and leadership advisory firm. She too has over 25 years of human resource experience in the automotive, healthcare, and workforce solutions industries, and has broad international and multicultural expertise. Before joining Sigred Solutions, Christy served in strategic human resource roles at several leading organizations, including General Motors, Heli Services, Pepsi Cola, and Volkswagen. Most recently, Christy served as the global head of talent development at GM. Hey, Christy.
Hello.
I would just like to say, I don't know how you ladies have 25 years experience when I don't think you're even that old. So that's a pretty astounding thing to me. And next, and last but not least, of course, is Dave Worthams, my colleague here at MMA. He's our Director of Human Resource Policy. He leads our efforts with the legislature and state agencies on workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, education and workforce development, workplace safety, healthcare benefits, labor relations, and many, many more things. He previously served more than 10 years at the Michigan Bankers Association, most recently as the Vice President of Policy. And before that, he was with the Michigan Municipal League. He's a former Kalamazoo County Road Commissioner and served 7 years with the Michigan Legislature, including as policy advisor for 2 former speakers. So welcome, Dave.
Good morning, Delaney, and greetings from I-69.
Dave is commuting. He's on his way in. So please be very safe, Dave, but we're excited to hear some of the comments that you have to add to the discussion. So welcome to everyone. Thanks for being here today. And let's just start off with a kind of a kickoff question, the why. You know, why is training so important, especially with all the stressors that we've got going on, all the things that are competing for our time? Why is it important to prioritize training?
I'll go on and get started. I would say training is important to today and to the future. So when you are investing in your employees and giving them what they need today, it helps them to be successful. It also is helping you, if you're to prepare people for the future of what you need. So if you already know where your organization is going and you're able to identify the difference where people are today and where they need to be, it gives you an opportunity to close those gaps. It's also something that really helps to retain people. It is a non-monetary contribution to people. A lot of times people feel like it is a reward. And when it is done well, it's something that people can share beyond themselves. So you can bring in a bit of information with one individual and it can spread across your organization in amazing ways. So there's a lot of potential in training if you apply it appropriately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It truly is a big retention. Actually, Michigan Works did a study recently that showed that, the top things that made people want to stay in their job, it was that their company was investing in them, showing them that they believed in them, that they had a succession plan or a growth path, and that training is critical to that. I know there's always been the fear of, well, what if I train them and then they leave? What if you don't train them and they stay, right? So it is critical, and I think most people want to be valued and felt like they're important, and that the company wants them to grow, and training is a good way to do that.
And we've been hearing, post-pandemic with this, what's being called the Great Resignation, right? We're seeing folks shift around, but for different reasons than what we've always thought before. It's not a matter of 10 cents an hour here or there, but we're hearing people, they really want a career path. They want to know, as you mentioned, that someone's investing in them. And this is a great way to do it, that they know where they're headed. That they're not just stuck in a dead end job. But, I think to that point, there's costs of not training. What are some, you kind of made a reference to that, Jamie. What are some of the costs that you think of not investing in training and doing this the right way?
Well, I think when you look at training overall, and actually when you look at anything in your business, what's the ROI, right? We're as business people, we're in business to make a profit, right? That's the point. So I think you need to look at training and what's the ROI. And so there's an ROI to do it, there's an ROI not to do it, right? And so I'm having this conversation actually with a lot of our clients right now because, we have funding from Talent Fund, or we need to do this, but I can't spare people. I can't take them off the floor. We can't shut down production to train. And my pushback on that is, are you sure? Have you done the ROI yet? Because there at some point there's a cart horse issue and you have to figure that out. And you're right, at some point it may not make sense to take them off the floor and do this now, but it might. Again, if you're looking at it, so the example I was using was, if you have people who don't have problem solving skills, they're great people and they're working hard, but they're not thinking through some of the problem solving skills, and you don't take that time to train them, where's the downtime impact? So for example, a machine goes down for maintenance, you're down, what are your people doing? Do they know, and is there good problem solving, like, okay, that would be a good time to maybe take my break now, so that I don't take my break 5 minutes after the machine comes up and now I'm back down again. Are we thinking through those things? And the more that we enable and encourage and empower, particularly the folks on the floor, to make those decisions and to start thinking through and to be rewarded for that kind of thought process, the smoother your line runs, the less downtime you have, the more productive you are. So if you can start thinking in terms of, okay, if I were to take this line down to train these people for X number of hours, what kind of ROI would I have to get to make it worthwhile? Right? I would have to see this benefit and then it's worthwhile. So those are the kind of conversations we can start to have. Those are the kind of conversations we can help clients with, determine the methodology of when do I train and in what, so I'm getting the biggest bang for my buck. I think that's really, really critical. But if you don't do that, you continue to have the same old problems, right? It's, I want things to be better, but nothing to be different. You can't have it that way either. So
Right. If not now, then when? Because, I think everybody thinks, well, I'll find a time where some downtime and there'll be something busy then, there'll be something else,
Well,
the
and that's
current challenges. Go ahead.
when it's, if you're not busy, can you afford to train, right? So there's always an issue. So you have to say, am I going to accept maybe a short-term pain for a much longer-term gain that continues to go on and on, year over year annualized is what you're looking for. And I think the biggest piece on that is that what's the plan? I mean, that's the other thing I think people need to think through on the training front is, what's the plan? what do I need, who do I need to train, and in what, to make sure that my critical tasks are done, right? I know that the critical things that have to happen every day, we're covered. I know the things that there are areas where we need to move forward in order to find those cost savings, in order to overcome those quality issues, in order to get that bid or that contract. We have to be able to do X. Those are things we need to be focused on, and what's the plan to get there.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, Jamie, a plan. You know, where do people start? You know, how do we get kind of an idea of what we need to be doing so that you can get a plan on when you can insert it, and what do you need to prioritize? What do you suggest?
I'm actually going to share my screen here with everybody and show you something. Okay, can you all see my little Excel spreadsheet that's up there?
Yes.
Okay,
It's a big Excel sheet.
it is kind of a big Excel spreadsheet, but we call this a flexibility chart, and it's a really great training tool. Emlyn is going to put it in the chat so that you can have a copy of it, so you can utilize it. But basically, here you've got your group or department. Here you've got your rating. So is somebody, they're not trained, they can't perform the job. They've been through an orientation, they understand the job and the metrics. They've been trained, they understand the performance of the job, and they're capable of doing it with some supervision. They're certified, so they're capable without supervision, or they're a mentor. So we have those there, and then here, along your vertical axis, the names of the folks. We did this for a plant manager. There was a company we were working with that wanted to, across their global platform, wanted to get all their plant managers trained, kind of in a career path. You know, these are the basics they have to have so they could build their bench strength. So then we helped them determine, okay, what does a plant manager really need to know? So we had different courses here that we felt were critical for plant management across the board to know. And then they were able to rate them where they were in the training. And this allows you to get an overall score of where am I at. So you could do this with a line, a department, a plant. You could have multiple of these types of flexibility charts. There's a report that will kind of show you where people are at and how many. And I believe, nope. Yep, there's just the report there. But you know, and you can obviously modify this if you want these formulas to do something different, but it tells you, you know, where do I need to be? Now, for example, we're going through this and we need everybody to be at a 3. That's what we're working to. We need a couple of mentors, but we need everybody to be at the certified range. And so that's what we're working to. And then within there, we can develop specific plans for each person to get them to that level. So what do they need and how do we do that? And then you can go that step further and then again, tie, where's the ROI, right? What am I gonna get? What am I gonna get when I do this?
Sure, I think that makes a lot of sense when you're talking about when you see it on black and white, you know, evaluating where people are, where they're not, and, you know, developing the step-by-step process of getting them to where you need them to be, where they can kind of, you know, I think this makes the point that you were trying to make about the cost of not doing training. What are you missing out on? What are people not capable of doing unless you invest in them?
This also helps you with right person, right seat, which I think is a really, really big issue that we look at. So a lot of times we know somebody gets promoted because they're really good at their job, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily really a good leader. Or they're, boy, this is a great employee. We want this person here. We want to develop them. They've done such a good job. We want to promote them. But are you promoting to the right place, right? So right person, right seat is really critical. And this is a tool that can help with that. It helps you, well, maybe this person's better in a staff role, in a support role, as opposed to a leadership role. Or, maybe this person is a natural leader, but they're not very technical, but that's okay. They can have enough technical knowledge to still be able to lead.
Taking Delaney's invitation to make this an open meeting, I thought I'd toss in a couple of cents. So, Mike Durgis with Sigred Solutions, and Jamie, I think that worksheet is fantastic from a retention standpoint. We did an employee engagement survey earlier this year, and the top 2 pieces in terms of what motivates employees are having an impact on the organization and feeling valued by the organization. Sharing that template sharing that, whatever your training metrics are, helps employees on both of those metrics, because they see how they can have an impact by improving their training. And, they're feeling valued by the organization because you're saying, as an employer, we want you to grow in this direction. And then interestingly, on the two areas where employees were feeling least satisfied, one was actually still having an impact on the organization. So it was very important to them, but they weren't as all that satisfied. And the second was pace of growth in the organization. So again, the training ties into how, where they see their pace of growth and where they see them going in the organization. So I think all of that helps towards retention.
I mean, how often have you even felt this way as an employee? Like, okay, I get my review once or twice a year, but what do I need to do to get to that next level? Right? And that tells you, okay, here's what you need to do. So you can lay something out that's very quantifiable, very measurable, that can take people to the next level. And that's the other thing too, this concept of career pathing, letting people know, okay, here's how, if you wanted to be a successful plant manager, you have to be able to be certified in each of these areas. You hit that point, then you should be capable of running a plant, or whatever those things are. That gives people a goal. And now, okay, now I'm all in. My company's in, I'm all in. I have something to work for. Why would I want to go someplace else? I see where this is going. That's really critical. And I don't see that happen a lot out in manufacturing. I do see a lot of people going, well, I don't know what's next. I don't know what my options even are. So, and Christy, you can probably talk to that too, of, how do you communicate that and set up that kind of culture where we're having those conversations around that?
Absolutely. And one of the things I love about what you shared is we are seeing more and more that people don't necessarily want to move up, but they still want different experiences within their organizations. So building something like this allows people to see, okay, can I see the training plan for that job over there? Because maybe I don't want to be a supervisor yet, or I'm a supervisor and for the next 5 years, I want to be a supervisor. Maybe beyond that, I'll want to do something else, but can I be a supervisor somewhere else? And what are the competencies and the skills that are needed for me to be successful there? Now, what's interesting too, and what I love about this tool is I get questions about, okay, so I only have a small pot of money. So where am I going to spend it? And one of the things we know is organizations should be thinking about the roles that are most pivotal to their company. So here's the hard part. If you are reporting into the C-suite, everyone there is going to raise up their hand and say, well, of course I'm pivotal. And those are not necessarily the people who are pivotal. They're very important. And you have to tell them you are important, but you are not driving the most revenue for our company. So what jobs make the most money for us? Those are the jobs where you need to invest. The other thing you need to understand, especially from a leadership standpoint, you need to know who supervises your pivotal people. Because if you can create great supervision and leadership over the jobs that create the most revenue for you, then you have a really solid core. So those are the places where you should start. And then you can build out from there. What are the most pivotal roles? The other thing that is really nice about what Jamie shared is you may have a strategy today, and your strategy may have pivoted because of COVID. So this is what we're doing today. But our 5-year plan means that we're moving in a different direction. So perhaps the job that's most pivotal today may not be the 2 or 3 jobs that will be most pivotal in 5 years. So what are you doing to close that gap between where you need people to be and where they are today? So these tools become really foundational. Now, when I talk about something else that Jamie said, so I'm just going to build right on it. And people will say, if I train people, then they're going to leave. So there is a concept that I learned years and years ago from the Gallup organization. They said training for the street. So how do we train people and then have other people come and pluck them out of our organization? The reason that happens is because a lot of times people love getting that training, but they cannot connect what they do every day to what the organization is doing, or they don't see themselves as a part of the future of the organization. So thank you for the training, but no one ever told me, Christy, the work you do is very good. And we really value you. Sometimes just saying that is enough. If someone, like Mike Durgis, my partner, picks up the phone and calls me, I'll say, Mike, thank you so much for calling me about this opportunity. I want to see what's happening in my company, but maybe check back later. That is, you want to keep your relationship strong. And remember, we can't be everywhere at every point. So when you're working with your supervisors, part of what they need to be able to articulate is not only we're giving you this training, but this training is critical because when you were able to get more inventory out with lower the defects. Let me tell you what that means. That means less scrap, more to the customer. And let's look at what that means from a financial standpoint. So you have actually, so when people see that, you don't have to make it, overly complicated, but when they can see that information, they're like, whoa, when I go home at the end of the day, I save the company this, about this amount of money. Isn't that great? And I can go tell my family and they say, that's wonderful. We're so happy for you. But that's what people are looking for, right? So those pivotal roles become important. Succession becomes important too. And Jamie, how many times have we run into this where you have 4 critical roles, not pivotal, but very important to the company. And you've got the same 3 people lined up for all the roles. And if I go talk to Delaney will say, I know that Jamie only wants to work in my position. Then I go to David and David's like, Jamie is my person. I've already talked, but then when we get in a big room, that's not a bench. And guess what? What if Mike Durgis calls David and David goes over to another company? Then what are you going to do? So you have to be thinking about who's there, and that kind of development may be different. So part of the development may not be going off to a workshop. It may be shadowing and really getting clear on what I want to do and being able to rank and then say, okay, Murray is here, and he's been on our succession plan for the last 5 years. But every time we need to give him that extra experience, guess what? Oh, he's got an important project. I can't take him off right now. You can have him next year. Well, 5 years ago, you said I could have him next year. Well, if you take my apple and give me an orange, I'm going to fail over here. Okay, so how do we ever get the development that Murray needs? So those are the kind of questions that we can have when we are thinking more about the development and training of key people. And part of that is retention. Just to know that someone's talking about the opportunities for you is huge. So even though Murray has been very patient and he knows he's been on that list, but he hasn't gotten any movement towards those next roles. And he's watched Ernie get a job and Emily moved on and Jeff got something too. You can still do something for Murray and value him in a different way. We may go to Murray and he may say, you know what? Thank you so much for considering me. Come back next year. I'm going to stay on this project. It's important, but at least you had the conversation.
And
And I think
Christy,
having that, I'm sorry to,
go ahead, Dave.
I just want to kind of hamper on that. One of the things that one of my mentors prior to my joining the road commission said to me was, you should really think about this. You can be a leader, and he kind of planted that seed of ambition within me. And I think if you're really going to be serious about succession planning, you need to take a look at your deck of cards, take a look at the players, and figure out where do you need to plant that seed of ambition, and then use training as a way to fertilize that seed to get it to grow. One of the biggest issues that we were working on before I left the bankers to come over to the manufacturers, the fact that not a lot of these small community banks in Michigan were doing succession planning. The bank had already been in the family for 60, 70 years, but all right, dad is approaching 70. Is the son going to take over? If he's not the son, is going to be somebody in the community. How are you going to do those succession planning? How are you going to find out who those future leaders are, and how do you fertilize them? And I think using a good training program, using a 5-year plan, a training plan, really allows you to fertilize those 3s or those 4s that you have in your deck and turn them into jacks, queens, kings somewhere down the road.
Yeah, and I think, this talent crisis isn't going to go away. And so, we've looked at, there's kind of 4 things that we know you can do that will impact that talent situation. And so one of them is cross-training and skills acceleration, right? So that's what we're talking about here. So we're cross-training to critical skills, and that gives that person that taste of, do I want to go maybe this path instead? It allows the career pathing. So, that's definitely one of the options. I mean, obviously lean, right? So how do I eliminate waste? How do I take 6 seconds out of this cycle time? How do I eliminate 1,200 steps? How do I run 3 cells with 1 person instead of 3 people? So those things matter. Understanding of technology, right? Are there options where I can automate those jobs that are dirty, dangerous, dull, that get huge turnover that people don't want to do and they're not fulfilling and they don't retain? Can I automate those and then take my employees that are doing those jobs now and redeploy them again, upskill them and cross-train them to do something that's more fulfilling and pays more, and they stay? And there's a company, Vickers Engineering, who has done that exceptionally well, and they're not having talent problems. Then the last one is what we were talking about here, which is culture and leadership, right? So what kind of culture have I created? Do I have a culture here where people want to stay? They feel valued, right? They have a career path. They know what's wanted. It's an enjoyable place to work. It's not, sometimes manufacturing is going to be dirty. That's just the case. Sometimes but we can make other things happen. We can make it safe. We can make people feel valued. We can give them a reason to want to come back. We can eliminate what I call the parking lot monster, where you hire a new employee, at lunch they go out to their car and they never come back. That's a culture thing. So companies that are having those issues, you've got a culture issue. So I think that's everything you're talking about. But if the companies that we're working with that are doing those things, they're having much less of an issue, because they become, first of all, they're the employer of choice, right? So they're attracting talent. They're getting people in the door. They have good orientation and training programs and feedback and metrics. And so people are wanting to stay, and then they're wanting to tell their siblings or their cousins or whomever, hey, this is where you want to work. So it's that whole point of attraction and retention, but also the employees are engaged and productive. It's great to retain people, but it doesn't help if they're not engaged and productive while they're there. So those 4 things, if you're doing them, you get the kind of what I call the trifecta or the hat trick. You're attracting, you're retaining, and they're engaged. And that's what you want. That's what's going to get you through a talent crisis.
And I want to add something else that I think is really interesting that sometimes we forget. How many of you have ever been promoted and felt anxiety, or promoted someone and wondered, what happened to my star? You know what? Ernie was amazing. And then we promoted him and he doesn't seem confident. He's not really, what happened? What ends up happening, even if you're moving into a lateral role, you get promoted into a new role, there are things that you need to learn. And especially when you've been in a job where you have been performing, like firing on every single cylinder, and you move into a new role, you have to grow in competence, which is what we're talking about today, but also competence. And a lot of times I think we lose people because we promote them and we don't give them what they need. So sometimes I already know what I'm doing, but I feel nervous doing it. I don't feel as confident. So then instead of understanding I need to have that coaching support, I go in and micromanage. So I micromanage Megan, and she's like, Or Christy is like, really? I already know what I'm doing. You don't have to sit here and show me what to do. That's not the issue. So you obviously don't trust that I know what I'm doing. So the messages get mixed up, and it makes for a weak bond with the company where there might have been a really strong bond. But that is an opportunity for you to say to the person, we are going to put you into this new role, whether it's a promotion or it's a lateral. You are not going to feel as comfortable as you do right now. It's okay, we expect that, and you will get back to where you feel now, but know that that's part of why we're moving you. You're going to feel a little discomfort, but I need you to remember when you were successful making it through this again. Do you remember when you came into this job? How did you feel? What did you do? And to remind them that they've been through it before and they'll get through it again. a lot of times that's where we lose people, either because even if you're not saying it, your behavior may be, Ernie, what happened to my star? I promoted you and, you know, you're just not cutting it. So there is some care and some extra space that we have to provide people to allow them to grow into those roles so that they can be successful and not have them, they're already going to feel that on the inside. Don't reinforce it from anything coming from the outside. Give them the runway to develop into those roles to be successful.
I think, there's a number of challenges, and some of them we've addressed, just having the time and the capacity to be able to address in development and training. There's having the right approach, some of the things that you guys have mentioned, having the plan, making sure you're supporting folks. But let's be honest, money is a consideration. Do we have a budget? Is my budget too small? But I think that there's a number of tools that people may not be aware of, may not be maximizing, may not be considering. So I want to invite Dave Wortham to talk about some of the opportunities that are available. I know the state has, particularly in the last several years, recognized exactly what we're all talking about, the importance of skill development, training, and are working to support employers. So Dave, can you talk a little bit about the opportunities that are out there right now that people need to be taking advantage of?
Sure. So the primary one that I think comes to a lot of people's minds is the Going Pro Talent Fund. This is arguably one of the best training grant programs that the state has provided since 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. It's one of those things that kind of gets caught up in some budget discussions from time to time, but we're very confident that this time around we're going to see about $40 million that's going to be made available to employers of all industries and all sizes to use to provide training for their employees. Now, these the types of trainings that can qualify for this are those that lead to a credential. So if there's a certificate of some kind that would bring benefit to your shop, this is a great opportunity to connect your people with that credential, and then bring your entire organization forward as well. It is a process that gets you involved with your local Michigan Works agencies. The actual application is processed and submitted by through your local Michigan Works agency, and so they will sit down with you and find out exactly in those conversations what kind of training is going to be most beneficial for you, and what kind of training is going to allow you to answer that question: where should my company be 5 years from now? And who do I need to have in those spots in order to be at that spot 5 years from now? And then here comes Going Pro to provide you with the resources to get that training going so you can move those pieces into those particular spots. The one thing that we do know that Going Pro is going to really be pushing this year is an emphasis on diversity, on equity, and on inclusion. And by that, not only are they talking about different folks from different racial backgrounds or what have you, but they're also talking about bringing veterans and connecting veterans to those positions, particularly if you have a new position that you're looking to fill. We know we've got lots of vacancies right now. So once you find that person to fill that vacancy, you can kind of almost seal the deal by saying, once you come in, once we got you on board, we're going to be training you, and you just happen to be a veteran, so that helps us out even more so. Our friends over at the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity have suggested that they will be giving bonus points and maybe even some bonus grants for programs that are specifically focusing on those veterans who are returning to the market, as well as those who are promoting women, promoting racial minorities, and likewise. So have those conversations now with folks at Michigan Works and see if you can get on board with Going Pro. The other thing that's going to be happening the week of September 4th, and this is going to sound of weird. It's going to sound kind of weird, but you've got 4 federal unemployment programs that will end the week of September 4th. The pandemic assistance, the mixed earners persistence, what have you. Right now, you've got about 600,000 people in Michigan who are receiving unemployment benefits. 500,000 of those are from those federal programs specifically. So there's going to be a lot of people looking for work beginning, if not now, definitely beginning the week of September 4th. So you want to be prepared to take advantage of using your training programs to get those people in the door, getting them up to speed, getting them trained, and moving everything forward so that at the end of the day, they're not starving for food. So those are just a couple things that are going on, but definitely take a look at how you can tap into that by having those conversations with your local Michigan Works agencies now.
Yeah, if there's, people looking for work, we've got opportunities for them. Pretty much every single member that I've talked to has got an opportunity that we can get them to work. And if we can figure out these training opportunities with the support of folks like all of us that we've been talking about, MMTC supports with this, Michigan Works Agency support with this, Sigred Solutions help with a lot of these aspects. So, but I know, Chrissy, you and I had a conversation that not every training opportunity has to cost money. Certainly have a significant portion of your budget. Utilize these opportunities to leverage state dollars. But there's some things that you can do that don't cost anything, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we miss this all the time. There are people in your organization that employees go to. So we can I always say, I don't want to stereotype, but there are archetypes of individuals. So there's that one person who's probably been at the company a long time. And I don't want to go to my boss because I don't want my boss to not know I know how to do this. So instead I sneak over to Jeff and I'm like, Jeff, will you help me? You always come over here to ask me, but come on, I'm gonna show you. And then they show and then the person, thank you so much. I just have to help people around here. And typically that is not someone who is in leadership, yet someone who people count on in the company to be able to provide information. We miss who those individuals are in the organization, and sometimes they leave. And they've left without the knowledge transfer. And I will say over my career, I've been as guilty as others where we had to go and the person's retired. And then we're like, okay, can you please come back? You can come back for 10 hours a week. We can do whatever you want. You can go off and see your grandkids for 2 months, but can you please come and help? Okay, I'll come help you. But that is not the time to figure this out. So those are the individuals who are, I would call the key connectors and individual contributors. And you can easily find out you probably already know who those people are. So how do you help with that? You make it more formalized in one or two, there's many ways, but here's a couple. Number one, make them a mentor to someone who needs to close a gap of knowledge and reward them for doing that. On a wider scale, tell them I'll partner with you if you will present something that you know that people really need to know around this organization. So when people are coming to ask you for help, what do they come and ask you for? Would you be willing to do a chalk? So that's that individual contributor who might be in your, you know who they are, but sometimes we just don't acknowledge them in the way that we should. And that's a way to get that information across the organization. And it does some other things. It retains that person. It lets them know they are valued and that even though they are not in a leadership position, they add a lot of value. You can also look in, I would say in verticals. So is there someone in maintenance who knows something that needs to be known either within maybe some parallel, areas, or maybe in the whole organization? Can you help them to share knowledge? So a lot of times it is, you may already have something that is standing. It's hard when you try to create something extra to do this type of development. But let's say you already know you're going to have a quarterly meeting, or you already have a standing meeting with all employees. It's only 30 minutes. Can you take 7 of those minutes and allow one person or even a panel to talk about something? Or can you record it beforehand and play it? And that's something that you can actually share across your organization. That is taking knowledge from a pocket and spreading it across the organization, recognizing people, making them feel more connected to your organization. And the other thing that happens, and people usually don't do this in a large group, but they'll come and whisper afterwards and they'll say, David, why didn't you pick me? And you're like, Okay, because the topic was this. Okay, so next time we have one of those, can I present? Well, of course you can. Or, Murray's before you and Jeff, but you're going to be on too. Okay, because some people really want to share their knowledge, and that's another way of getting it out in a way that values people that you already have.
I think that's a great idea. And the idea of video right now could not be easier. There's so many tools at our fingertips. What we're using right now, Zoom, you can utilize that. You can create a free account and record yourself talking. You can record somebody else, have a discussion. You can use Teams. There's things like Noom. There's lots of things that you can utilize and leverage that across the organization. People can consume it on demand, can consume it in groups if they want to, small groups.
And let me just share something else. Sometimes the person you really want to get on video says, I don't do videos. And the easiest way to say, okay, we're not going to record you looking into the camera. Could we interview you? And you're never going to have to look into the camera. Just look at Christy. And that sometimes it's more engaging and more natural, because you almost feel like you were not supposed to be in the room, but there you are listening and learning. So there is a different approach. If someone says, no, I don't want to do a video, if you reframe it, you still get the same outcome, but you're just presenting it a little differently. It can be really nice. And just go in with your targeted questions. And here's the other thing that you can do. If there's things you want people to remember, make a little job aid. And I think job aids are even better if they're small and if they're laminated. So I'm just saying, you can get a little lamination machine and some scissors, or, cut it and maybe even punch a hole in it, but something to give, to people so they remember what were the, 4 key things that Christy said. Here you go.
There's technology out there now that's really not terribly expensive. There's things called like Tulip, which can do standard work and training. You can also use Tulip for multilingual situations, where if English isn't the first language, that training videos and standard work can be done in multiple languages. It's all visual, and it's not expensive. I mean, it's really very cost effective. So, we're doing technology assessments with companies and helping them discover that, hey, there actually are things out here that can help, and they're not going to break the bank.
And there's a lot of what I call, and I think many people call it, freemium. So it starts out free and you get it for a certain period of time. And then if you like it, then there is a paid piece. So there's sometimes ways that you can pilot something, tell employees, you're going to try this out. We'll see how it works. And if it works and the investment is worth it, then you keep it. But if not, you've still been able to provide some support, and then you can try something else. The cost of development, and I just think about the budgets that I've had over the years. And when we talk about Shoestring, every time my personal budget was cut, I never got that money back. And a lot of times as my budget was cut, I had even more than I needed to deliver. So I'm like, okay, how does this work? So being very creative, one of the things that I did in the past that worked really well, that I had seen in educational environments. And then once you move it into work environments, manufacturing environments, it actually works well, is if you have someone who's willing to just lead a circle. So a circle around a topic. So maybe instead of just having people watch videos that you've already paid for, if you have the opportunity to have them, let's say Murray volunteered, you know what, I'm going to take a team of 6 people, not in my department, through these 4 videos. So we watch the video before we get together, and then we come together and there's just a little thing we discuss. How does this apply? What can we do? How are we going to apply this to make the organization better, to make us better? Because a lot of times you can watch a video and the goal is to check off the box, not to really do anything of value with it. And a lot of times what is in a standard training video is not going to fit exactly with what's going on in your organization. So being able to just say, what are the nuggets? What can we actually apply from there? You know what, this one thing could really work. And being able to to put that in is important, but what also ends up happening is those individuals start to develop relationships and call each other on topics that have nothing to do with the training they're going through. So then they start to share knowledge in the relationships that they have, or just vent. Had a bad day today. Yeah, it happens. Okay. Then next week, how are you doing? Much better. Just that kind of support keeps people engaged and really looking forward to staying in organizations. I know people who have stayed at companies because of their coworkers. Maybe not their boss, maybe not the job they're in, but they're just like, I don't know that I can get another mix of people like this. So I don't want to leave.
Develop those relationships, but I also wonder if there is an element of pride that you are considered, a leader. I'm a part of this group, and we are problem solving. We're working together to move the organization forward.
Absolutely, and I would say there is when there is prestige, and we have to be careful about how we craft this. When you craft prestige into development, it makes people want to participate. So even if it is, we're piloting and we only selected 6 people. Well, how did those 6 people get selected? Can I get into the next group? You start to see where the enthusiasm is within your organization. And you can say, okay, for the next, we're going to go through this first pilot. You can be in the next group and be able to have people desire, how can I get into that? Which is really great. Making sure that you have a good start and an end, and that some of those pilots don't last too long. You're very clear. This started, it ended. What were the metrics we were looking for? Were we successful? Where do we need to tweak? Let's bring another group in. And not, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
oh, no, I was just going to say following up is important too, because sometimes you'll bring somebody through an experience, even if it was a pilot, and then they're like, well, what happened? So having alumni groups where people get together and you say, okay, we took, the 5 of you through, and we've now done 15, you all are part of a special group who have only been through this. So let's get you together and we're going to do whatever. Oh, that's nice. Yes,
yeah, that last part is very huge. I am fortunate to have served as the 87th past president of the Michigan Junior Chamber, and the Junior Chamber is all about building leaders and providing those trainings that people don't necessarily get in the workplace. And that would be my suggestion, is take advantage of some of the associations that you are members with, whether it's the Michigan Manufacturers Association, if it's a local chamber, or if you've got young leaders, young employees, get them involved in your local junior chamber. You will find that the junior chamber will offer a lot of trainings that will translate directly into the workplace, whether it's project management, whether it's how to form your own portfolio, so that when the time comes for you to interview for that promotion, you know how to do that. There's interview prep stuff. There is impromptu speaking. There's a whole lot of things. And so I'll put in the chat box a couple links that you can take a look at. And these trainings are free. Or they come along with your membership. So if you are a member of an association, that means your employees might be part of that association as well. Make that connection and use those associations to empower your training program or supplement your training program, and do it on the cheap.
And David, I just want to build on that too. I think sometimes we send people off to development, but we don't know what they actually learned. So being able to wrap something around to say, okay, we're going to send 2 people off to this workshop, come back and share with us the key things that you learned and how it applies to our company. That's huge too, on so many levels.
Yeah, we recommend that, we put a lot of people through supervisory training, and we'll always recommend to management saying, so how are you now going to support them? So we've just spent 4 days teaching them all these new skills. They're excited, they're ready to go. How are you going to support them? Because a lot of times what we hear is, gee, I wish my manager would go through this training. So a lot of times it will say, if you really want this to stick, we're going to put the C-suite and management through, a very abbreviated version of this. So these are what your students are going to learn. Now you have to come back and say, how are you going to support them? Because you don't get your ROI if you don't sustain this behavior, right? If you sustain the behavior and it builds, you more than get your ROI very, very quickly, and it's exponential. So that's a key thing too, is, where's the support, where's the sustainability?
If I could chime in, I really like that idea, Jamie. Oftentimes you disconnect, like a training event is separate from the work, right? But when managers engage their employees and say, hey, you're going to go to this training for development, when you come back, these are some things we could talk about. Then people are paying attention. They're thinking about what in the real world they're going to apply it to. And then, of course, like, the follow-up of, well, what did you learn? What would you like to do with it? Can we get some more ideas out of you?
That context is important. I think it helps, leverage the dollars that you spend, Dave mentioned doing it on the cheap. Well, then, you've spent money for training one or two people that you can really utilize to train many, many more to use that knowledge. But also, not just have someone thinking that, hey, I'm just getting out of the office for a day and I'm getting a free lunch. This is for a purpose. We're hoping that this will build and for you as an individual and the organization as a whole. Thanks, Mary.
Questions, comments? Things that you're doing or not doing?
Yeah, any great ideas out there? I know people have gotten creative over the last year and a half and even prior to that, trying to make sure that we get folks where they need them to be. So always interesting, great ideas. I know Emily has shared contact information for many of us that have been speaking here. We would always love to chat with you if you're thinking after today's discussion, hey, there was this point that Jamie made, and I'd like to explore that a little bit more. Feel free to reach out in the chat. There's that information there. The flexibility chart that Jamie shared is also, there's a link there as well. Christy shared a whole lot of good ideas too, as has David. If you need to get a hold of, if you want to figure out how to access Going Pro, there's some other programs too. I know Michigan Reconnect. There's a number of other smaller, but still significant funding opportunities that have been announced in recent months. There's a lot of money coming down from the federal government under the American Rescue Plan Act. And I know that our state in particular, and we're advocating here at MMA to make sure that we're leveraging those dollars for transformational investments in our state. And what could be more transformational than skill development in manufacturing workers? So feel free to reach out to Dave or myself on those things. I want to thank everybody for this great conversation today. Any final thoughts for any of our folks? Any points that you'd like to make?
On the Shoestring budget too, we will come out to anybody's plant and do an opportunity assessment. So we'll walk through, we'll look at the opportunities, we can talk about the training plan. There's no cost to do that. So I don't even know where to start, we're happy to come out. We'll do the walkthrough, we'll sit down with you. Okay, what's the need? Give you some recommendations, help you lay out a plan, and there's no cost for us to do that.
Thanks, Jamie. Any closing thoughts, Christy?
I would just say, once again, Mike Durgis and I are also available. You can give us a call, and we'd love to talk to you, really just not just about the search piece, which is the core of our business, but really everything that wraps around the employee life cycle. Because if you think about what we talked about today, when you are using whatever training dollars, or even if it's no training dollars at all, and you're just pulling the ideas that we talked about into your organization, there's a more holistic way of thinking about, as you bring people into the organization, what are they coming into? And for those people who are already there, what are you doing to retain them? And we've done quite a bit of work around employee engagement, understanding how employees are engaged and really how that's shifted during the pandemic. So we've had some shifts, we've had some differences. And like we said at the beginning of this training, we are in the midst of what we're calling the Great Resignation. So how do you keep your employees? And how do you attract your unfair share of talent to get into your organization? That's something that Mike and I can help you with. So feel free to pick up the call, phone and call us, send us an email. We're here to help.
Absolutely. And, I should have mentioned that this discussion today is the third in a year-long series that we've been doing together with Sigred Solutions. You can find recordings of the first two discussions. The first topic we discussed was recruitment in this crazy market that we have going on right now. We talked about the second one is retention. Now we're talking a little bit about development. We got a couple more discussions coming this year. You can find them on demand at mimfg.org, which is MMA's website. You can find it at sigredsolutions.com. Dave, any closing thoughts from your end?
Well, I've always been renowned to make sure that I leave people some homework whenever we talk about going pro. I kind of mentioned how, we're expecting $40 million, but we haven't got it yet. So if you have a conversation with your state legislator, please mention to them how important going pro and training is, and that it's worth their time and investment to make sure that public policy gets across the line. So, and if you need help connecting with your state legislators, by all means, reach out to myself or to Delaney. We'll be glad to hook you up with that conversation. And don't be afraid of talking to state legislators. They put their pants on just like the rest of us do. Some put their left leg in, others put their right leg in first, but it's two legs most of the time. So it's all good. So definitely have that conversation. And I would also be remiss if I didn't say go Broncos.
Go Broncos. We've got 3 Broncos on the line today, at least. I know Jamie, Dave, and I. Any other Broncos?
I'm a fan. My daughter went to Western.
Oh, great. Awesome. Well, thank you all today. Thanks to each of our participants for joining us today. I hope that you were able to find some valuable information, and feel free to reach out to any of us. The recording will be available after today's session at mimfg.org and at sigredsolutions.com. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining us. Happy Tuesday.